Friends, hello and welcome to my channel Tech Guru Speaks. Today I would like to describe one concept of Java programming that is called Java Varargs. It is Java's capability of dealing with variable number of arguments in terms of method signature or method call. So we'll explore this concept. As you already know, Java method signatures are normally fixed. For example, a method that declares some parameters of a specific type must be called with those parameters only. Say for example, we are having a method with three parameters and all the parameters of type int. Now if we provide too many, say for example 4 instead of giving 3, too few, say 1 or 2 instead of giving 3, or incorrectly typed parameters, so instead of providing int we have used a string, so it will create a compile time error. So that particular problem can be solved by using the concept of method overloading prior to Java Standard Edition 5. So suppose we are going to consider a method that will be trying to add two values. So it may be int, so it is integer sum. It may be floating point type, so it is going to provide decimal sum, or it may be trying to concatenate two different strings. So we can have string type arguments for that. So we have to define three different methods, I mean to say three different version of methods for dealing with integers, floating point that is double, and for string. So obviously it will be increasing the coding effort. So if we are having only one method that can deal with different number of arguments and different types also, it would have been better. So prior to Java SE5, that was one of the main problems of Java programming. Now in Java SE5, the concept of Varargs has been introduced. So with this concept, this particular problem can be solved. So just have a look at the following method signature here, like public void test method object followed by triple dots, then come args. So that means it is showing you the idea of using varargs, that is variable number of arguments. So with this particular method we can pass here any number of arguments. So this particular method signature indicates that the method is allowing a variable number of arguments, and they must be of type object, and they also must be the last argument or the only argument. Here in this example it is the only argument in the method signature. So if we see the following method calls, like the following three method calls, we could see that in the first method call we are having three integers, so 23, 34 and 78. So we are having three integer parameters, so they are getting converted into object type implicitly. Actually it is using the concept of auto boxing. So this is the idea. So next comes what? Next comes, we are taking the second method call and we are having two string type arguments being passed, so hello and goodbye. So basically these string types are getting converted into object type by auto boxing. So all these conversions are basically taking place implicitly. So it is not explicit typecasting, it is basically implicit typecasting, and that will be done automatically. So no need to worry about the type conversion process. In the last method call we are having a floating point type of argument, which is basically a double type. So it is again converted into the object type. So that is the idea. Using this particular concept, we could be able to handle a variable number of arguments in terms of Java programming. So we don't have to define, say, different methods for each of these method calls, like test method with integer arguments, test method with, say for example, string arguments, or test method with respect to, say, double type arguments. So all these are basically handled properly by using this concept varargs, that is the variable number of arguments. Now we are going to demonstrate this concept using some programming example. So now I am going to create my program here. Suppose the first method signature is to be created here. Say public static void test method, the method that I have shown you just now in my slide. So it will be actually using triple period, that is triple dots. So then comes my main method. Now I can have a for loop, that is the enhanced for loop. Now I need another SOP statement to ensure that each of the output will be in a new line when the output will be displayed here. So now I am going to call this method using different number of arguments. Say first it is taking 3 arguments and they are of type int. Then I am going to take string arguments, and lastly I am taking a double type variable. So that is the basic idea. So now I am going to run this program. So you can see the output here. So for the first method call, it will be printing all the values, that is integer values here. For the second method call, it will be showing the string type values, and for the last method call, it will be showing here floating point type, like double type here. So that means you can understand that for each of the method call, this particular method definition, if I am taking the first line, that means the method signature is accepting variable number of arguments irrespective of the type of arguments also. Like I can take here say integer or string or double type. The most important thing is to that we can have variable number of arguments with this particular construct. Like using this concept of Varargs in Java, we can pass here variable number of arguments. Now each of this method call actually using the say auto boxing concept for the implicit type conversion. And another thing is to consider that so for each of the method call, the parameters that is being passed here, like object triple dot followed by args here, will be handled as an array of type object. So that is the most important thing to consider here. So all these argument that is being passed here in the parameter of this method signature will be considered as an array of object. So this concept applies to the second method call as well as the third method call. So that is the beauty of this particular approach. So here I am using the var as the only argument in the method signature. Now in the next example, I will be showing you the use of this particular concept as the last argument in the particular method signature. Rather, I will be using a constructor here. So that will be using the concept of varargs as the last argument. So just I would like to consider a particular problem statement here. So I am going to use this problem statement to be implemented by using the varargs concept. So basically suppose we are having the students example in a college, like we are going to develop a program that is showing the use of Varargs concept for students in a college with variable number of subjects. And you can assume that the students maybe are from different departments, like different streams, and it's obvious that students coming from different streams might have a different number of subjects. I mean to say the variable number of subjects. Okay, so now we are going to calculate the total marks and the average marks obtained by each student. That is the idea. Okay, and it is to be noted that every subject is having two parts, part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is basically the internal marks and part 2 is the, say, external marks. And now we are going to define the student class. Actually we are having the main class, that is the Varargs test. Apart from that we are having two more classes, like class subject and class student. So now in the student class, actually we are going to have a variable number of subjects as its definition. So I mean to say in terms of its constructor definition. So in the constructor of the student class, we are actually going to consider the variable number of subject concept. So first we need to define the subject class, followed by the definition of student class. Then we are going to have the main method here. From there we are actually going to call this particular uh, object of the student class. So that is the idea that we are going to implement here. So we have to basically show the result for individual student subject wise. That is the final result to be displayed. Okay, so now we are going to implement this program. So class subject. So now we are having different fields of the class subject, say code and title, and then comes the part 1 and part 2. So we are having some additional field, that is the marks. So it is basically the addition of part 1 and part 2, but it is initialized to 0. So in the constructor definition we are not going to use this, we are using this for only code title, part 1 and part 2. So now I am going to define the constructor for the subject class. So I am selecting each of the fields one by one. So it will be creating the constructor definition for you for the subject class. So that is the idea that I have used here. So then I'll be doing what? Then I'll be trying to define the student class using the subject as a variable number of arguments. So that is the thing now I'm going to develop now. So suppose in the student class I am having fields like roll number, which is of type int, and some additional fields are also required, like in order to calculate the total marks and in order to count, say for example how many subjects are there for individual student. I have got another field that is called count, it is initialized to 0. So basically these are additional fields. So roll number is of type int, then I am having, say, string name, that is the name of the student, and the stream. So the stream of the student is basically considered here. Now I am going to define the constructor, that is the most important thing to look at. So it is actually having roll number, that is an integer type, then name, then stream. So now I am going to consider the additional parameter. Okay, so the additional parameter is the subject. So this subject class is considered to be the additional parameter here. So triple dot. So now you can see that I am using this as the last argument that I have already told. So it can be the only argument. In the previous example I have shown that, and in this example it is the last argument. Okay, so now I am going to consider a for loop within this constructor definition. So basically I am going to use a, say, enhanced for loop here. So So I am writing here s dot marks, that is for individual subject, equal to s dot part 1 plus s dot part 2. Okay, so then comes what? Then we are going to actually show that thing for you in terms of SOP, that is system.out.println. So code, that means the subject code itself. So it will be shown by s dot code, that is the subject code. Then we can have the title. So it is shown by s dot title. Then comes the marks. So actually this is the mark that we are going to consider here. Okay, so code, title and marks. So that is the marks for individual subject. So that is already been calculated here. It will be displayed in within this particular enhanced for loop. So then we are going to calculate the total value, that is total. So this is for the student, that is a specific student that I am going to consider here. So total plus equal to s dot mark, that is the individual marks will be added with the total. And lastly we are having this count value being incremented, because for each of the subject the count value will be incremented by 1. So that is the structure of the constructor. So just have a look at here. So we are having roll number, that is roll, then name, then stream, then we are having the subject as a variable number of arguments. Okay, so now we have defined each of them in, I mean to say I have actually initialized each of these variable individually, that is the idea. And then I have tried to use the enhanced for loop to calculate the individual subject marks by adding the part 1 and part 2. Then we are going to show the code value, the title and the marks for individual subject I would like to consider. Then we will be calculating the total and the count is getting incremented by 1. So that is the idea. Now we can have a toString method that is giving you the string representation of the object. So that I am going to do here. Now we are going to modify the contents of this particular toString method. So because we are going to show the value of average also, so typecasting is required here. So count is basically required to calculate the average value. So now we are going to show you the individual student related information. Role name, then comes stream, then comes the total, and lastly the average. Plus lastly a new line character to print the consecutive output for each of the student. So this is the definition of the student class. So next comes the main class definition. So first I am going to have a main method. So now I am going to create an array of objects because each of the student will have a different number of subjects. So in that sense we will be using an array of objects of the class type subject. Say name, say Raja Raman is the name, roll number is 10, say suppose he is from IT. So then I can have a new subject. So it will show you what are the list of arguments, code title, part 1 and part 2. Suppose I am considering here, say for example the code is CS301, or better to say it might be say IT301. So it is having some name, say for example computer organization CO. So then comes the part 1, say for example he has got 27 out of 30, and the next part he has got 52 out of 70, say for example. So then comes another subject, that is the second subject. So it is IT302. So it is say for example data structure, in short DS. So he has got say for example 26 in part 1 and 50 in part 2. So then we are going to print this. So whenever it is called, I mean to say whenever we are going to actually use this particular object here, actually object reference I mean to say, it will be calling the corresponding to string. So first it will be better if I am writing here it is for student 1. So it is showing that it is student 1 related info. So similar kind of information should be created here for the student 2. So it will be now student 2. Now the stream is different, it is say CSC. Roll number will also be different, suppose. And list of subject may also be different. Suppose I am going to include here 3 subjects. and so it is a number for the first subject, that is computer organization. The code may be different from that of an IT student. So it is, say for example, part 1 35, part 2 55. Now I am going to consider another subject, say for example C++. So I must include a comma here. Say for example it will be S2 CS303. So it is for example C++. So she has got 30 in part 1, and part 2 she has got 50 for this particular subject. So in that way the program is now complete. So I have got three classes here: subject, so then comes student. So it is having a variable number of subjects that you can see here. Then I am going to consider the main class, that is the Varargs test, that is having the main method, so within which I have created two objects basically, better to say. So one for student S1, that is basically related to an IT student. He is having two subjects, so I can give you the idea of using the concept of Varargs, that is we are having that subject array, that is the array of subject objects, I would like to say here. So it is having two elements in the subject array. So but in this student object S1 we are having two subjects, but in the next student we can have a variable number argument, that is we are having actually three subjects. So for this particular subject array we are having three elements. Now we are going to run this program and you can check the output. So here comes the output. So it will be better to write it 2. So just, yes, so student 1, so code IT301, so title CO DS, the second subject. So it has been added here, so we are getting some marks for individual subject. So then the role name, stream, total marks and average, it is getting printed here. For student 2 we are having three subjects: CS301, 302 and 303. Different subjects are enlisted here and their corresponding numbers are also given here. So it is calculating the total and average value for individual students. So in that way, by using this concept of Varargs, we will be able to calculate the total marks and the average marks for individual student, considering a student can have a variable number of arguments. So I hope that you have understood this particular concept of Varargs in Java, that is the Java's capability of handling variable number of arguments. So if you like this video, I'll be requesting you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. So here comes my YouTube channel, and please also visit my website techguruspeaks.com. You will get a lot of useful information here, and it is my email ID that is for your contact. So with this I conclude today. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.